You stand beside the motorcycle for the first time since the accident. The damaged parts have been replaced, the scratches are gone. The mirror is new. From a distance, the bike looks almost exactly the way it did before. But nothing feels the way it did before. The helmet feels heavier in your hands. The gloves seem tighter around your wrists. The sound of the engine no longer blends into the background. Every vibration feels louder. Every car passing nearby seems slightly too close. You check the brakes, then you check them again. Someone watching you may ask the question you have already asked yourself dozens of times. After everything that happened, why would you ever ride again? To them, the answer seems obvious. Maybe you are reckless. Maybe you are addicted to adrenaline. Maybe you are pretending the accident was not serious. Maybe you are too stubborn to accept that you should have learned your lesson. But your shoulders are tense. Your heartbeat is faster than you want to admit. And for several seconds, your hand stays on the key without turning it. You are not standing there because fear has disappeared. You may be standing there because fear has become impossible to ignore. The accident did not only change your relationship with the motorcycle, it may have changed your relationship with control, confidence, vulnerability, and the person you believed yourself to be. So the real question is not simply why a rider returns after a serious crash. The deeper question is this: are you choosing the road again, or are you trying to prevent fear from choosing your identity for you? Before an accident, a motorcycle can feel almost neutral. You put on your gear, you start the engine, you check traffic. Your hands and feet perform movements you have repeated hundreds of times. You do not consciously analyze every sound, every intersection, every change in road texture. Your brain has learned what deserves attention and what can remain in the background. Then the accident happens. Suddenly, ordinary details acquire a different meaning. The sound of tires sliding, a vehicle waiting at a side street, the smell of hot asphalt, a certain curve, a particular kind of weather. Even the pressure of the helmet against your face can bring back a reaction before you have time to form a thought. Your mind may know that you are standing in a garage. Your body may respond as if the danger has already returned. This is one of the ways fear learns. When something frightening happens, the nervous system does not store only a clean, organized memory of the event. It can also connect the danger to the sights, sounds, sensations, and situations that surrounded it. The engine is no longer just an engine. The intersection is no longer just an intersection. They have become signals, not because you are weak, but because your brain is trying to protect you. The problem is that the brain often prefers false alarms to missed threats. It would rather make your heart race 10 times unnecessarily than remain silent during the one moment that could hurt you again. That is why a rider can talk calmly about motorcycles, watch racing videos, or spend hours repairing a bike, yet feel a sudden wave of anxiety when it is time to put on the helmet. The fear is not always a belief. Sometimes it is a physical prediction. Your body is saying, "I remember what happened here." And that creates an apparent contradiction. If every instinct is warning you to stay away, why would you deliberately return? Because the accident may have taken something from you that avoiding the motorcycle cannot automatically restore. A serious crash can create a disturbing realization. Skill does not eliminate uncertainty. You may have been careful. You may have worn protective gear. You may have maintained the motorcycle. You may have followed the rules, and still, something happened that you could not fully control. Another driver failed to see you. The road surface changed. A mechanical problem appeared. You misjudged a situation by a fraction of a second. Before the accident, you may have understood intellectually that riding involved risk. But understanding risk as an idea is different from experiencing the moment when control disappears. That moment can damage more than your body. It can damage your sense of agency. Agency is the feeling that your actions matter, that your decisions can influence what happens next, that you can enter an uncertain situation and still respond effectively. After an accident, that feeling may become unstable. You begin replaying the event. What did I miss? What should I have done? Could I have prevented it? Can I trust my judgment? Can I trust other drivers? Can I trust the road? Sometimes there is no satisfying answer, and the absence of an answer can be more psychologically difficult than the physical danger itself. Returning to the motorcycle may then become an attempt to rebuild a relationship with an unpredictable world. Not to prove that nothing bad can happen, but to discover whether you can still act when certainty is impossible. This is why some riders begin with very small steps. They sit on the motorcycle without starting it. They ride through an empty parking lot. They practice braking. They choose a short route with light traffic. They review the accident, change their equipment, take a safety course, or become more deliberate about road positioning. From the outside, these actions may look overly cautious. Internally, something important is happening. The rider is creating new evidence. I noticed the fear and I remained present. I felt my body tense and I did not lose control. I approached the intersection, evaluated it, and responded. I completed the ride. Confidence rarely returns because you tell yourself, everything is fine. Your nervous system does not trust speeches, it trusts experiences. This is where self-efficacy begins to rebuild. Self-efficacy is not the belief that you are invincible. It is the belief that you can respond. That distinction matters. An invincible rider believes danger cannot touch them. A capable rider understands that danger exists and trusts their ability to notice, decide, adapt, and sometimes turn back. After a crash, the first ride may last only 5 minutes. The next may happen early in the morning when the roads are quiet. The rider may avoid the location of the accident at first. Later, they may approach it intentionally. Progress is not measured by speed. It is not measured by how quickly the rider returns to the highway. It is not measured by whether they can act exactly as they did before. Progress may simply be the ability to feel fear without becoming overwhelmed by it. But rebuilding competence is only one part of the story. Because for many riders, a motorcycle is not simply a machine. It is connected to identity. Think about what riding may represent: independence, technical skill, community, adventure, focus, a sense of belonging, a private space away from responsibilities, a ritual shared with friends, a version of yourself that feels alert, capable, and alive. Some people feel scattered in most areas of life, but completely present on a motorcycle. There is no room to think about an argument from yesterday, an unpaid bill, or what someone thinks of you. Your attention narrows. Your body, the motorcycle, the road, and the environment become part of one continuous task. For a while, the noise inside your mind becomes quieter. So, when an accident takes riding away, the loss may extend far beyond transportation or entertainment. You may lose weekend routines. You may stop seeing certain friends. The tools in the garage remain untouched. Your gear stays in the closet. Conversations that once made you feel connected now make you feel like an outsider. And every time someone asks whether you will ride again, the question may sound larger than they realize. They may think they are asking about a hobby. You may hear them asking, "Are you still the person you were before?" This is where returning becomes emotionally complicated. Perhaps getting back on the motorcycle is a way of reclaiming something deeply meaningful, but perhaps it is also a way of protecting an identity that has no room for vulnerability. When self-worth becomes tied to being brave, skilled, independent, or fearless, stopping can feel like more than a decision. It can feel like a personal collapse. You are no longer simply a person who is choosing not to ride. You begin to fear that you have become a coward, and that fear can be powerful enough to put you back on the motorcycle before you are ready. Not because you miss riding, not because you have thoughtfully accepted the risk, but because you cannot tolerate what staying away seems to say about you. This is why two riders can perform the exact same action for opposite psychological reasons. Both put on the helmet, both start the engine, both say, "I'm not going to let fear win." But one rider is making room for fear, the other is trying to erase it. One rider chooses a quiet route, notices their breathing, respects their current limits, and accepts that the ride may end earlier than planned. The other rides fast, pushes beyond discomfort, jokes about the accident, and treats hesitation as humiliation. The visible behavior is the same. The internal relationship with fear is completely different. Sometimes social pressure intensifies this conflict. Riding communities can provide genuine support. Other riders may understand the loss, help repair the bike, share their own experiences, or accompany someone on their first ride back. But communities also create expectations. People may praise the rider who returns quickly. They may say, "You can't think about it too much. You have to get back on before the fear gets worse." Real riders don't quit. These comments are often meant as encouragement, but to someone struggling with shame, they can sound like a test. Now, the decision is no longer only about riding. It is about belonging. It is about whether others still see you as strong. It is about whether you still deserve the identity you had before the crash. So, the rider minimizes pain. They avoid discussing nightmares. They laugh while describing the moment they almost died. They act impatient when family members express concern. They return before their concentration has recovered, before their body has healed, or before they have understood what the accident changed inside them. This can look like courage, but sometimes it is fear wearing the costume of courage. Fear does not control people only by making them avoid something. Fear can also control them by forcing them to prove they are not afraid. That is one of the most uncomfortable parts of this story. We usually imagine fear as a force that pushes us backward, but fear can also push us forward too quickly. It can make us enter situations we do not truly choose because slowing down would expose an emotion we do not know how to carry. This is where the difference between facing fear and escaping emotion becomes important. Gradually approaching something frightening can help the mind learn that fear is tolerable. You feel the anxiety. You remain aware of your surroundings. You respond instead of panicking. Over time, the body begins to update its prediction. The motorcycle can be dangerous, but touching it does not mean the accident is happening again. Traffic requires caution, but every vehicle is not about to hit me. Fear can be present without becoming a command. This kind of return expands freedom, but forcing yourself to ride can also become a form of emotional avoidance. You may use action to avoid grief. You may use speed to avoid helplessness. You may use risk to avoid the thought that your body is vulnerable. You may try to recreate the person you were before the accident because accepting change feels unbearable. In that case, riding does not help you process what happened. It helps you temporarily avoid feeling it. Imagine two riders approaching the same intersection. The first notices their heart rate increasing. They reduce speed, they scan the road, they recognize the memory. They tell themselves, "My body is reacting to what happened, but I am here now." If their concentration begins to collapse, they pull over. They are not proving anything. They are collecting information. The second rider feels the same physical reaction but becomes angry. They accelerate. They tell themselves to stop being weak. They refuse to slow down because slowing down feels like admitting fear. They may complete the ride. They may even feel relief afterward. But the lesson their mind learns is not necessarily, "I can handle fear." The lesson may be, "Fear is unacceptable and I must overpower it immediately." That creates a fragile kind of confidence. It works only as long as the person can keep performing strength. The moment anxiety returns, they must prove themselves again, and again, and again. A healthier return does not require you to defeat fear every time. It allows you to listen without automatically obeying. That means the rider can continue. It also means the rider can stop. Psychological flexibility is the ability to choose according to the situation and your values, rather than following one rigid emotional rule. A flexible rider can say, "Riding still matters to me, and I am willing to rebuild gradually." They can also say, "I am not ready today." They can change motorcycles. They can avoid certain weather conditions. They can ride less often. They can take additional training. They can decide that some risks no longer fit the life they want. They can even decide never to ride again without turning that decision into proof of personal failure. A rigid rider has fewer options. They must return because not returning means weakness, or they must never return because returning means danger. In both cases, fear is making the decision absolute. This is why recovery cannot be measured only by whether someone gets back on the motorcycle. Returning is not automatic evidence of healing. Staying away is not automatic evidence of defeat. The better question is, how much freedom exists inside the decision? Can the rider consider the risks honestly? Can they acknowledge fear without shame? Can they listen to concern without feeling controlled? Can they adjust their identity without believing they have lost themselves? Can they choose differently tomorrow without treating that change as hypocrisy? The accident may have broken the illusion that skill guarantees safety, but recovery does not require rebuilding that illusion. It may require developing a more mature form of trust, not trust that nothing will happen. Trust that you can make thoughtful decisions even though something might. Not trust that you will never feel fear. Trust that fear can exist without becoming your entire identity. Not trust that you will return to the exact rider you were. Trust that you are allowed to become a different one. Perhaps before the accident, you rode without thinking much about vulnerability. Afterward, you check your surroundings more carefully. You leave more space. You become less interested in impressing other people. You stop riding in conditions that once made you uncomfortable but that you previously tolerated to avoid looking cautious. You may ride with more respect for uncertainty. Some people will say you have become afraid. Maybe you have become honest. The person who returns after an accident does not always recover by forgetting what happened. Sometimes recovery means remembering without allowing the memory to make every future decision. The accident becomes part of the story, but not the only author of it. And sometimes the most courageous decision is to ride again. Sometimes the most courageous decision is to stop. Sometimes courage is a short ride around the block with shaking hands. Sometimes it is telling your friends, "I'm not ready." Sometimes it is admitting that you do not know whether you will ever be ready. The action alone does not reveal the courage. The relationship with fear does. So return to that first image. The repaired motorcycle, the helmet in your hands, the engine waiting in silence. You place one hand on the handlebar. Perhaps you start it. Perhaps you do not. What matters is not whether anyone watching believes you are brave. What matters is whether you can hear all the voices inside you, the fear, the pride, the grief, the desire, the pressure, the memory, and still recognize which choice is actually yours. Because freedom after fear is not the ability to act as though nothing happened. It is the ability to let what happened change you without allowing it to completely define you. And perhaps the clearest sign of recovery is not that you can ride again. It is that you no longer need the motorcycle to prove who you are. If this story reminded you of your own return or your decision not to return, share your experience in the comments and subscribe for more explorations of the hidden psychology behind the choices we make.